So I've brought Brian Wang back on today because I am going to be playing in territory that is above my pay grade. I mean, if you look up above my pay grade in the dictionary, you'll find my picture related to the subject matter that we're going to be covering today. But I know that Brian Wang, at least, is somebody who is very clearly educated and has experience in this area. So, Brian, glad to have you on board today.
Glad to be here, Rene.
All right. So if you like having Brian on, you know what to do. I don't have to tell you anymore. I'm sure you'll see some notifications in terms of, joining Patreon, following Brian over on his Patreon. He's easy to find. Everything is under
next big future. Next big future.
Next big future. So look for Brian on Twitter, on his website in particular. That's really what he's got going right now. This is his big website, huge website. Okay. My prediction is that we will go from an extreme silicone shortage today to an electricity shortage in 2 years. He said that during an event earlier this month. XAI, so in other words, the entire AI system, but even his own company, is going to be advanced intelligent. And that is going to take up a tremendous amount of compute, and so basically we got EVs. So the folks that are worried and afraid somehow, the folks that are doing a lot of FUD about the BEV business going forward have indicated a great concern that there's not enough grid to handle the BEVs in the future, 2, 3, 4 years out, and I can see. About 3 or 4 years out, I could see my own issues where it might start to get a little bit tough out there if they hit the numbers that we think that they're going to hit. But now Elon says, okay, because of ChatGPT or GPT in general, now we're adding something even bigger, which is video compute, where we're using video to train these neural nets. That this is going to take even more massive amounts of compute, and that's going to use up a bunch of energy. So tell me what and he says, and it's going to get way worse 10 years from now, 15 years from now. We're going to be looking at something like being we're going to be producing 1/3, and we'll need 3 times as much.
Of what?
Of energy for the electricity that we'll be using. So 3 times as much as what's on the plan right now. Even the best case plan, he said. Take the best case plan and triple it, is what he said.
Okay. So I've looked at the various issues of scaling, for the master plan part 3, getting to 30 terawatt hours, all those kind of things. And basically, when you start getting to a lot of megapacks, and a lot of semi-trucks, right? 30 million semi-trucks and all that kind of thing. And basically all electric cars, not just the new cars, but the fleet, right? That end state, you're looking to take 20%, 25% of all oil production, and then you're going to make it with electricity, right? Because I'm no longer running diesel trucks, I'm running electric semi-trucks, right? That's one of the big things because, the semi-trucks are getting like a gallon every 7 to 10 miles, and they're driving 30 billion miles in the United States, however many tens of billions of miles in China and a place like that. And actually they drive more in China because that's the industrial thing. Asia has more stuff than Europe and United States. So basically I must change 25 million barrels per day into electricity. And that basically works out to about 20 to 30%. Then more if you're growing. If we say, okay, we have more vehicles, more stuff than our current base because they grow the economy. Go ahead.
Let me make sure I'm catching. I'm getting this straight, because I might have to tell my wife later.
Okay.
Okay. So I need to be sure that I know where we're going here. All right. So the oil that we're using today, when the fleet is pretty much fully replaced, the electric fleet is pretty much 100% replacing the ICE fleet, which is 15, 20 years from now, we should be
2030 is, early,
20,
late,
30 years.
things that are wrapping up really, really well at that point.
So your calculations are that at that point, we'll need 25% less oil, because that is, if we're equivalent, if there's no additional miles traveled or additional usages compared to what we see now. And of course, that doesn't count that we might become more efficient in electric usage, but just kind of a same for same.
Yeah.
Take away 25% of the total oil business and replace it with electricity. Okay.
Right. Because if you just, okay, if here are the 100 million barrels, 110 million barrels per day that we're using, and they say, okay, how much is for transportation? Well, ground transportation, then that's about 25%.
Okay.
Right. And then you have like 5% for air and shipping and rail and blah, blah, blah. And then you got industrial usage, and then you got residential usage. Right. Okay. So when you just look at the big overall picture, and then, those factors are roughly equivalent around the world, then if I electrify all ground transportation, then I've taken all that stuff I'm using with oil and it's going to electricity. Right. So however I generate the electricity, nuclear power, solar, batteries, etc. But I have to get the power because I'm still driving the miles, but instead of a gallon of oil, I'm using kilowatt hours.
Right. All right. So we have the EV transition, and Elon is saying that we were maybe a few years out before the EV thing was going to start impacting the electric grid in a way that could create its own shortages. I mean, we hear shortages from time to time in tough weather or whatever, but just in general, we would start to have this crossover of a problem because of EVs. Many that are the fudsters out there have been complaining loudly that this was going to be a bigger problem than the folks that are the green community are making it out to be. But Elon is saying, yeah, it's going to be a problem. But now we're going to add this whole new problem on top of it, because the compute that we're going to need for all this GPT, and for now using the same GPT methods to do video, this is going to use a ton of compute. And what do you think this is looking like at this point?
So currently, the various statistics around how much we use for global IT cloud computing, estimates seem to be about 240 to 320 terawatt hours in a year. So the US is about like 4,100 terawatt hours. Europe about 3,200 terawatt hours. Globally, 19,000, 20,000 for electricity. So, and then it's growing, world economy grows, then our electric usage or energy usage goes up. Computing power is still around that 1.5% level, right?
And that's worldwide.
Yeah. But it's not evenly distributed, right? Because it's mostly in US, Europe, China, wherever the big data centers are, right? So, but then that's also where the electricity is. Anyway, so then it could be around 3%, of the US electricity usage, right? But that stuff is growing at a rate of like, 30, 40%, right? Because a year. So a doubling every 3 years, in really good years, if things were to grow 50%, then you have a doubling, right? So that is, it gets really, really significant. It's like suddenly I'm sucking up the power, like at 320 terawatt hours per year. A 1 gigawatt hour nuclear plant efficiently run in the United States would generate about 8 terawatt hours, right? So I'm looking at 40 nuclear plants for all that power. But you're sucking at different points, but they tend to build the big data centers, Google and Amazon, have like 10 or 20. They build them beside a nuclear power plant or a hydro dam or a big solar farm, places with excess electricity, right? Where they can suck it off cheap because they're thinking, I want the cheapest thing, right? So, because, all this pricing and other stuff and availability is different. So they were kind of like leeching off the excess for a long time. But now they're so big that they have to, either make new power or, they can't, displace and say, okay, I'm not going to power that, the Pentagon or something like that big building. I'm going to suck off all this power. And then the Pentagon go, whoa, I need power too, right? So that's the problem is that you start, there's still excess power in different places. Like, Texas has about 5 terawatt hour. As you build extra solar, because it's generating at the wrong time, you can get the power. That's where the batteries come in, where I can shift it to the right time. But basically, as I become bigger and bigger, all this little sneaky sucking power here and there, getting cheap power, that becomes like, I am so big, going to 10%, 20%. That's like, you got to build it special.
So you're saying compute could go from 3% in the United States to 10 or 20% by the mid 30s, for instance.
Yeah.
At the same time that we're asking the electric power capacity to increase dramatically because of BEVs. And then on top of that, we are saying we also want electric ovens, stoves. We want heat pumps to take over for the oil that we're using in our natural gas that we're using in our homes. I mean, so there's this massive amount of demand that's being created, and Elon is saying that 10 or 15 years from now, we're going to need triple, but it's going to hit us earlier because of GPT and other kinds of compute needs. We're looking at 2 to 3 years from now. We're going to be in a world of hurt if we don't start putting out some tremendous either savings. We either need to become more efficient at the use of energy. Now, can we start there? So it's either save or make more or both.
Right.
So Elon. So one of the things I was confused a little bit about. I know a little bit about it. My dad was an electrical engineer. You'd think I'd know more about this stuff. But in fact, he was in the what do you call it, transformer business, the electric transformer business. Anyway, if you want to save energy in these massive data centers, Elon mentioned something about methods that could be used that would save a lot. I did a quick little bit of research, and one of the things was using water instead of air to cool. Mm-hmm. But Elon wasn't talking about that. That was the one that came up as in the research I did. He was talking about some capacitors or some electronic ways of managing these systems that would be a lot better.
So basically, the transistor, the information itself, if I do any kind of computation, right, that's going to use a certain amount of power. So by my gigaflops, whatever that, you can say, okay, it's going to use point whatever watts, right, watt hours. It's just, no matter how you slice it, physics says you will use that power, right? But we're more wasteful than that. We're not at the efficiency level of physics, but fundamentally, when I do the computation, there's going to be power used. So, you can be less wasteful, and you can say, okay, instead of being 10 times wasteful, I'm down to 2 or 5. But that would mean I have to systematically change many, many things, right? To shift from this to this, it'd be 100 million servers, right? I got to phase it out. It's a transition. I can start getting 10%, 20%, but going from getting from 10, 20%, 30% more efficient to 3 times more efficient, is a huge ask, right? And it's also about how I do the computing and all that kind of stuff. So and the more I'm less wasteful, then the harder it is to program it and to do it. It's like, drive from here to New York, but do it, don't use that much gas. So I'm hypermiling, I'm driving 50 miles per hour, I'm streamlining and doing all that stuff. So you can do it, but then it's like, and all 10,000 people are going to do the same thing. But then other people saying, I still got this car, it works, I'm going to go at 15 miles per gallon, F you, right? So there's the issue of like changing the whole fleet, changing the whole fleet of computers and stuff like that, right, is a very difficult thing, right? It's just not going to happen, right? So if it becomes an emergency, or it becomes so painful, like, we go from, 10 cents a kilowatt hour up to 30, because, the price will respond. If the demand goes that out of whack, then the price will go from 10 cents a kilowatt hour to 30 cents to 50 cents, whatever, right? In Europe, it's at 30 cents right now, right? So it goes up to $1 per kilowatt hour. Then it's kind of like, you can keep running your inefficient thing, but it's costing you $1 per kilowatt hour. Are you still going to use it? It's going to cost you like $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's like, okay, now I got to junk this inefficient thing, and I got to switch to the efficient thing. Right. But going through that painful price spiking thing, I'm sure something that Elon wants to avoid.
Right? Yes.
So then he's saying, let's not be stupid here. We can see this is going to happen, right? So maybe let's get ahead of the problem, as opposed to, but like we see, like if the automaker is always behind the problem, right? Or other, countries and nations are behind the problem, right? So that's the issue, is that the choices have to be made, the systemic shifts in order to get to more efficiency, as opposed to, and on the other side, there's the forcing factor where if I do this more compute, I'm doing it so I can make money. I'm doing it so I can, get this AI solution and become the Google and whatever. So Google's saying, okay, I'm making $200 billion a year and, $10 billion for energy. I'm going to pay it because I make $200 billion a year.
Yeah.
Right? So, but then who gets squeezed out is the people who are making lower margin.
Right. Sure.
But there are huge things like the new superconducting possible technology, which would take time to develop, but which could suddenly drop energy usage by 1,000 times. And there's also something called reversible computing, where if I can physically reverse the computation, right, then that can save me 10 billion times, right? But that whole thing is like on the, beyond the bleeding edge of whatever. It can be done. The physics say we need to get there eventually, but it changes things a lot to get there. Ultimately, something that will happen.
So the ones that I don't need to go back to college to learn about, the ones that seem pretty obvious to me are either you put in a lot more solar, because that's the fast one, and a lot more batteries. So anytime that government could say to the IBMs and the Microsofts and the Googles and to the Teslas, okay, if you're going to put in more compute, then you've got to put in enough solar or some kind of power. You've got to be responsible specifically for generating that additional energy that you're going to be using, because we're not going to let you take it off the grid. Or individual states could say that. Right. Individual utility companies could say, nope, we ain't got no more. Right. So that would become, one of the ones that I can see that as a possibility. The second would be, as I mentioned, the idea that maybe cooling would happen through some kind of
so cooling is about 40 to 50%, 40% of the cost, because they run them too hot and something like that. So so there's different kinds of technologies there. Some is more efficient than others, and obviously air, straight air cooling without running a fan is the cheapest. But then we've in general gone way beyond that a long time ago. So basically, people usually don't want to make that sacrifice to like run so inferior, because I need to have my exaflop machine running super hot. But again, exaflops are not all the same, because AI exaflops are 16-bit versus the old double word link 64-bit for other supercomputer applications. So it's easier to get more exaflops, 10 times more or whatever, from the AI version of it, because they're using shorter words.
As always, amazing to have you on board and help me with all this stuff that is above my pay grade. And now I feel like I've had a graduate level course. So it's all good. All right. So
thank you.
Again. Yeah. And then hit like if you liked it, so we get Brian back often. And then subscribe, notify, all that stuff, and follow Brian. Next Big Future. He's everywhere. Right. Especially you want to go to nextbigfuture.com. That's the main place he'd like you to visit and check out what he's doing over there. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you, Randy.
And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.